Welcome to the video. Today I have this Saris H3 Smart Turbo Trainer and I'm going to be going over everything you need to know, a super in-depth review. From the setup, the installation, the calibration, we're going to be riding and testing it for 2 weeks, going on workouts in erg mode, using simulation mode as well. We'll look at stability, we'll look at sound, we'll look at the Saris app and also connectivity via Bluetooth and ANT+. This is an extensive guide. Now, as always, I'm not about wasting people's time, so I've left timestamps somewhere here, and you can jump to the part of the video that best suits you. Also, this video is not sponsored in any way, shape or form, so I'm going to be brutally honest. I'll also try and give the conclusions up front to make it nice and direct. So with that all said, let's get stuck into it and see what this Saris H3 trainer is about. So let's start with the tech spec. Now this Saris Smart Turbo Trainer is going to be compatible with 130mm and 135mm QR skewers, so that's like road bike, which will be rim brake or disc brake. It's also compatible with 148mm by 12 and 142mm by 12 through axles. Now this is interchangeable with little adapters that come with the trainer. We have a 9kg flywheel. Now this is pretty big when compared to the Wahoo Kicker Core, which has a 5kg or 5.5 kilo. The 9kg is hefty and it helps create a more realistic feel when you are spinning. Now it comes with a Shimano SRAM 8 to 11 speed free hub, which is also compatible with the new Ultegra Endura Ace 12 speed. They say that the trainer is plus or minus 2% accuracy. There are trainers that are 1% accuracy, so we'll see how that is again when we're actually riding. As for external sensors, there are none required whatsoever. The Saris H3 will measure your power, it will measure your cadence, and it will measure your speed. Now, as with all other trainers, we have ANT+ and Bluetooth connectivity. I will be looking at connectivity later in the video, connecting to Bluetooth and ANT+ and see how it connects and see if we have any issues. They say that the noise level is 59 decibels at 20 miles an hour. I will be giving this a thorough test because noise on these turbo trainers is an important factor for many people who are cycling in a house. It can simulate a grade of up to 20%, which we can all agree is pretty damn steep and not very fun to ride. It also has a maximum resistance of 2000 watts. Now, if you can generate 2000 watts, fair play to you, but the average cyclist, that's going to be totally fine and you probably won't reach that. We have a maximum rider and bike weight of 300 pounds, which is around 136 kilograms. So that's the information given by Saris. Let's see how it actually is and give it all a thorough test. We have everything out of the box, so it's time to set up. 2 points to note. The Saris H3 does not come with a cassette. You'll need to buy a cassette. I have an Ultegra cassette that was purchased separately. And 2, it doesn't come with a skewer either. So I have a skewer from my Wahoo Kicker Core, so I'm going to be using that. So first thing first, we want to undo these feet just to make it more stable. So you pull this little clip back, and when you pull that back, you can pull the leg out. Same again this side. You'll feel that lock in place. If you want to undo it, you just push that in and back you go, all right? Once the legs are out, you can actually twist these feet. And what you can do is adjust it to make sure it's perfectly level. So if I screw that one in, for example, what we're gonna have here is this one is raised. So you just unscrew it and push it down and make sure that both of the feet are flush with the ground, and that's going to make sure that the turbo trainer doesn't rock from left to right. Next up, we're going to set up the axle we want. So we've got this on the left here, this comes out, and we've also got this one on the right here, okay? So both of these can be adjusted, taken out, and we can swap them with the ones that were in the bag. In my case, I have my disc brake bike, so I need 135mm. Now I know that's the one in there, but what I'm going to do is show you how to take this in and out. So it's pretty straightforward. All you want to do, get an adjustable spanner or an actual spanner that is this size. I'm not sure what it is. I think it might be 20 or 21. Simple rotation. It doesn't need to be tight. So there you go. That's undone. And then that one comes off. Now we can see here, this is 135mm disc brake. And this one, for example, is 130mm. So that one is a rim brake. So we have these if you've got a disc or rim brake QR, so a skewer going through the bike. And we also have these adapters, which are for the 148mm and 142mm through axles, okay? So make sure you get the right ones set up. Now to change this side is exactly the same. Spanner on, and you're just gonna undo that. And there you go, you can undo it. But that one is correct for me, so what I'm gonna do is just nip it up. Doesn't need to be super tight. And there we go. So there you go, that's how you change the through axle adapters on the Saris H3. Now to install the cassette, which is probably the most important part, or the one that most people sort of think about or worry about. Now to do that, it is simple, but you do need the right tools. Having the right tools makes all the difference. We can start with a wrench. Now I have a torque wrench here, and that way I can torque up the cassette to the right torque settings. You're also going to need an adapter like this, and that is going to get onto the cassette tool. Now this is the cassette tool if you've not seen one before. Now what this basically does is go through the skewer, and you can see the splines which slots into the cassette. I'll show you. So those two go together like two peas in a pod. Finally, you need a chain whip. So here's my cassette. I've got an Ultegra 11 speed. This can take Shimano SRAM 8 to 12 speed, okay? Now this is in all different parts, but don't worry, you can't put it on any wrong way. Now what you can see in the center here, right, we have splines. Now these splines match up with the splines on here, on the free hub body. So for example, what I do is I find the smallest one. There's one really small one, okay? And you find the smallest one on the cassette as well. Here it is at the top, and you line them up, and then it should slide on nicely. So here we go, up at the top. There we go. And then we do that exact same process with the rest of them. You may need washers in between as well. So do check out the specific cassette you have and what you actually need. So washer on here. The writing on the cassette always faces outwards, okay? Lastly, we have the lock nut. This has really thin thread, so make sure it is on correctly. You do not want to cross thread this, okay? Make sure you can feel it's on there correct. And then what I do is get the cassette tool, slide it in, and just do it up by hand, and make sure you do that first bit by hand so you're not forcing it. It should go on okay. There we go, all right? So you can see here, as we turn this, everything is spinning, including the flywheel inside. That is why we need the chain whip, so we can grip it and have something to give some resistance against us twisting. So with the chain whip, put it on one of the higher gears. And that is what you're looking for. You don't want this to be wobbling. Now, if you have an 8, 9 or 10 speed cassette, you may need a washer in behind, okay? So you want to make sure that there is no movement, no play whatsoever. We're on nice and tight, good to go. Next up, you want to get your bike onto the trainer, so let's do just that. And just slot the bike into the dropouts like so. It can be a bit fiddly, so just make sure you take your time. And this is obviously where you work out as well if you've got the right adapters on. So that fits perfectly. And I'm going to put the quick release on the left hand side of the bike out of the way of the drive chain. So let's undo this end bolt. Now one tip I have on this, okay? You want to push down on the seat while you are doing it up. You want this to be dead seated right down, okay? Because if it's up slightly, it's not seated correctly. So put your weight down on the seat and then do up the skewer, okay? Push the skewer nice and tight, then you know the bike is in, and a little bit of movement, just make sure the bike is actually in and can't go anywhere. So there we go, we're on perfectly. Next, we're going to look at connectivity with Bluetooth and ANT+. We're going to see how quickly it connects, how easy it connects, and if there are any issues. So let's start with Zwift. Now with Zwift, I'm going to be using Bluetooth, and this is with a little Bluetooth dongle. So that's just plugged into the PC. Now to get started with the setup, what I'm going to do is open up Zwift, and I'm going to go to the pair settings. Now this is always at the start, you always need to pair. Then what I'm going to do is make sure that the little Bluetooth icon is pulsing to make sure Zwift is looking for some sort of sensors. Now when that's happening, it should auto connect with the power meter with this Saris H3, which in my case it did straight away. It picked it up straight away. Sometimes it may help also to actually be pedaling and make sure the power meter is active. This is certainly true for speed and cadence sensors. So first up, Bluetooth on Zwift, that was flawless, connected straight away, no problems whatsoever. Next, what I'm going to do is connect with ANT+ on my GPS. Now to do this, it's going to vary based on your cycle computer, but for me, I basically go into the bike profile, into the settings, and let the computer know that there is a power meter present. Then I'm going to search, and hopefully it picks it up straight away, which in my case, it picked it up pretty damn quick. To be honest, it was a few seconds, and I can see that the power meter is present. Then if I go into the actual data screens, I can see that I have the power, I have speed, I have cadence. So everything is there and everything is working correctly. Now I must admit, this was pretty flawless in terms of connectivity. I have had issues with speed and cadence sensors before, trying to connect to my GPS with ANT+, for example. But on the Saris H3 smart trainer, connected via Bluetooth and ANT+ with no issue whatsoever. 200 watts. 300 watts, 400 watts. Sprint. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about erg mode on the Saris H3. Now I have done multiple training sessions using erg mode, and it is a little bit different to something like the Wahoo Kicker Core that has a smaller flywheel. There are some differences, and you might like those differences. It's going to vary depending on your needs. Now for me, what I found is the heavier flywheel, it takes longer to spin up and longer to sort of get going. What that means is when there's a change, say from 150 watts to 250 watts, you kind of have to preempt it a little bit, otherwise erg mode can get ahead, the resistance can come in and you can't spin up quick enough to get ahead of the erg mode. So what I found is, say for example we're going 150 to 250, 5 seconds before, 10 seconds before, I'll start to ramp up the pedaling and then go. And that's the same when it drops down. So if it dropped down from 250 to 150, you know, there's a few seconds after where you're actually pedaling over 150 and it slows down. So it's much more of a gradual build up and a gradual drop, which if you like that, then that's all good. On my Wahoo Kicker Core, for example, it feels much more like when the watts change up or down, you can just spin quickly or stop quickly because of the smaller flywheel. Now what that means though is it's more realistic. If you're out in the real world and you come to a hill, you're not just going to suddenly be like that. You kind of build your momentum, you get in the right gear, you know, so it does make it a little bit more realistic in my opinion. Another thing I've noticed as well is when you are changing from different power levels, the prescribed wattage, it might go above it or below it. So if we're going from 150 to 250, when you start pedaling, it might go up to 270 to 80, and then it will drop slightly below it and then it will level out. With the Wahoo Kicker Core, I haven't found that. It normally just jumps straight to it. So maybe that's just this trainer, maybe it's to do with the momentum. So as you start pedaling, you're spinning up and it builds a momentum and then it has to adjust itself. But it's all more realistic, you know. In the real world, that would happen as well. If you started spinning quicker and pushing, your watts would go up and you'd have to work it back down. So that's what I found in erg mode. So there are two questions that remain. Is this Sarris H3 Turbo trainer worth purchasing? And also, is it worth purchasing over something like the Wahoo Kicker Core? Now, I would say yes, it is worth purchasing. It is very, very solid. It is very well built. It is heavy. It seems very sturdy. I like how the legs go out and you can twist and adjust the support. So overall, I think it's a good turbo trainer. And yes, I would buy a very realistic feel. So that's question number one answered. But is it worth buying over something like the Wahoo Kicker Core? Now, to be honest, I would say probably not, and that is because you get used to either one. I was very used to the Wahoo Kicker Core and I got used to the Saris H3. The reality is you get used to riding whichever one you purchase, so if you can save some money, then I would get the Wahoo Kicker Core. Obviously, if you have the money and want a more realistic feel with that bigger flywheel, then the Saris H3 is going to be the turbo trainer for you. It is more down to personal preference than anything else, and dollar bills in the bank. So there you have it, fine people. That is the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed. Give it a big thumbs up, like, comment, subscribe. It does really help the channel. And if you made it this far, I really appreciate you watching. So until the next one, self-love, safe riding. I'll see you soon.